All right, welcome to the Digital at Scale podcast. So today we're going to try something a little different. Today I've been joined by two of my best friends, Max and Adam. They're also the co-founders of AnswerAI. And we're really excited to kind of share some of our insights. We typically get together on Fridays to talk about what's happened in the AI world. I figure why not just come up, record it, and share it with everyone in the audience. So today we're going to be talking about a lot of really cool things that have recently come out in the AI world. First off, everyone's talking about GPT-4.0, what its capabilities are. We're going to dig into the keynote, and we're going to talk about some of the hidden capabilities that kind of were buried in the keynote that we're going to talk about. Then we're also going to talk about Google I/O. So right on the heels of the ChatGPT 4.0 announcement, Google had their annual conference. Me and Adam were actually able to go to the very first Google I/O way back in the day. It's amazing to see how that conference has grown over the years. I think they have it at an amphitheater now. But we're going to go over some of the AI announcements they had at Google I/O. More importantly, the announcements they had in terms of enterprise, in terms of the context window, and also a new project they have called Project Astra, which I'm excited to talk about. We're also going to chat a little bit about the Flowise updates. So Flowise is an open source tool that we use as the foundational backbone for AnswerAI and creating different workflows. Lots of really cool stuff coming out there in terms of agents. And also we're all three developers, and there's been a lot of updates in the Next.js and React worlds. And we're going to dig into those and talk a little bit about how we're going to implement those in our own projects going forward. So kick it off. Let's go ahead and start. Let's pull up GPT-4 announcement where they talked a little bit about some of the capabilities of GPT-4. So we're going to do that by looking at the keynote from their CTO.
Today, I'm going to talk about three things. That's it. We will start with why it's so important to us to have a product that we can make freely available and broadly available to everyone. And we're always trying to find out ways to reduce friction so everyone can use ChatGPT wherever they are. So today, we'll be releasing the desktop version of ChatGPT and the refreshed UI that makes it simpler to use, much more natural as well. But the big news today is that we are launching our new flagship model, and we are calling it GPT-4.0. The special thing about GPT-4.0 is that it brings GPT-4 level intelligence to everyone, including our free users.
So I wanted to dig into that a little bit more, which is really exciting. What we're seeing is that GPT-4.0, their flagship model, their latest one, is now going to be available to free users, which is huge. So if you haven't checked out ChatGPT recently, I highly suggest going back and checking out 4.0. But one of the things that they also announced recently is that GPTs are going to be able to be used for free users. So I'd love to get your guys' thoughts on like what that's going to do to be able to help, get AI into the masses.
Yeah, I think this is huge. I think one of the biggest barriers for like an everyday user who's maybe only like heard the name ChatGPT is like not knowing where to start with it. And so when you're talking about it costing money or them going in there using a free version but not even knowing what to do, like the GPTs is like a great way for them to get in there and have some examples and have something that they might actually find useful. And so the more that marketplace grows, I think it's going to really bring in people who are technical and enough to use it and have enough use cases to make it useful.
Yeah. Bringing the GPTs in there, I think that's been one of the things that was very enlightening was when we first, and I think even Adam, when we first tried ChatGPT out, I remember we were at that conference and you started just putting in like our own code, like, hey, can it actually recognize this? And that was like kind of the aha moment of, oh, wow, you can use this context window. and it started, I think, spitting out, like, we have a proprietary thing called the sidekick, and it was adding that to the future ones. And that was kind of the aha moment for me, was you putting it in there. But unless you had kind of told me that, or I hadn't been sitting next to you, I may not have figured that out as quickly as we did. So having that GPTs, and for those who don't know what GPTs are, they're essentially kind of like agents or assistants that can be built for very specific use cases. And we have a whole list of GPTs that I use that I can put the link in the description here. But yeah, Max, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's amazing now. This is very exciting for everybody. I have a bunch of friends that they've been trying to use GPT, but they don't really get it enough. And we've been using GPT-4 through answers and just ChatGPT overall. And we know how, sending screenshots or asking it to analyze files or work with code, how good that part is, and nobody gets that. So before, the paywall was like hard for people to get that aha moment and that experience. But now definitely, like, everybody will jump on this train because it's getting a lot easier to like use it, right, and interact with it, even more with the voice mode that you're gonna see in a little bit. Yeah, I didn't know about GPTs. That's pretty cool. I remember that extension we were using before, ARPM. I've recommended that to friends, and it was very, very good to start and get started with like use cases, examples, right?
Yeah, I remember.
Cool.
The ARPRM that would just kind of like insert these templates in there, and it was a great way to kind of see the different use cases of how different people were using it in just so many different ways. It was a great tool, kind of a little bit of where we kind of the inspiration for some of the sidekicks that we use and our own prompt templating that we did in AnswerAI. But you talked a little bit about the voice. I did want to share that because I think, these models are getting, I think I saw a recent kind of graph. Like, we all know Moore's law, where computing power doubles every 2 years. Based off of how quickly how these models are getting better, they're anticipating these models are now getting twice as smart and twice as fast, twice faster, twice cheaper, twice smarter in 5 months. That is just ridiculous.
That's all.
Faster, smarter, cheaper every 5 months. So this space is just getting started. And one of the biggest challenges has been interacting with it. Just that empty text box. And I think seeing these natural ways of communicating was really, really cool. So let's just take a look at some of these. One that I thought was really cool, I'm not going to go into the breathing. I think a lot of people have maybe even seen these, but one of the ones that I thought was, it's not in this one. Is its ability for it to help you with what you're looking at. And this is an example where it's using the desktop application where it's actually reading what is on the user's screen and helping the user as they're working. So let's take a look.
Okay, so I'm going to open the ChatGPT desktop app like Mira was talking about before. Okay, and to give a bit of background on what's going on, so here we have a computer, and on the screen we have some code, and then the ChatGPT voice app is on the right. So ChatGPT will be able to hear me, but it can't see anything on the screen. So I'm going to highlight the code, Command C it, and then that will send it to ChatGPT, and then I'm going to talk about the code to ChatGPT. Hey, ChatGPT.
Hey there, how's it going?
Yeah, it's going really well. I was wondering if you could help me with a coding problem today.
Of course, I'd love to help you out. What's the coding problem you're dealing with?
Okay, I'm going to share with you some code. 1 second.
Sure thing, take your time.
Okay, so I just shared some code with you. Could you give me a really brief 1-sentence description of what's going on in the code?
This code fetches daily weather data for a specific location and time period, smooths the temperature data using a rolling average, annotates a significant weather event on the resulting plot, and then displays the plot with the average, minimum, and maximum temperatures over the year.
Awesome, thanks so much. And in the code, there's
This is just something that, well, one, it's not activated on our account yet. I think some people are getting access to this now, but this kind of omnipresent, just expert on your computer at all times is going to fundamentally change how we work. I'm interested to know how you both plan on using this.
I think one for anybody that needs assistance with anything on the computer, this is going to be huge. If anybody's built websites and tried to make them ADA compliant, uh, it's incredibly difficult to meet all those um, rules, I guess let's call them. So this is could be huge for that. Much better than anything else that's out there. From a development perspective, to make it this easy, especially if you're wearing headphones. Sometimes you don't need it to be documented. Sometimes you don't even know what questions to ask. So having it be able to do this from what's live on the screen is massive. Um, it's like having somebody on your shoulder just kind of telling you all the answers pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's interesting use case you've mentioned about ADA. I hadn't thought about that one, but yeah, it's definitely a lot better than the screen readers that we have to use to to put all these different short codes and stuff in there. How do you guys feel that this is going to affect just engineering's job in general? I know there's been a lot of, discussion about are engineers even going to be coding in the next 5 years with tools like Devin, have, this that can just read it, tell you what the code is, probably eventually write it too. How is this going to change what we do as a profession?
It's a pretty bold idea to come and try to say how it's going to be, because it's like we were just talking, right? Every 5 months it's going twice as fast, twice as cheap, and twice as good. So we don't know what's going to be the next step, right? Right now it's omnipresent, it's with us, can answer anything you're asking, can help you unblock you at any moment. I think this update is awesome in removing that awkwardness when you're waiting for it, where you're kind of trying to stop it and you want to interact with it. So it's going to smooth that out a lot. But you still have to do the thinking, right? You're still the supervisor. You know what you want to build, you know what you want to create, and you want to guide it, right? So I think for at least the midterm is going to allow people that are not as technical to go a lot more further than what they can today.
Or even expand your technical skills. I've been doing more Python coding than I ever have, just because it's a lot easier to just ask ChatGPT. Sometimes I'll just give it the JavaScript version, be like, create this in a Python, right? So I can understand what the code's doing and then just have it translate it. So I think even expanding your own knowledge.
Yeah, and I not to change gears too much to Google's Learn LM that I was watching a bit earlier, but that ability to help teach people as they're going, I think is going to be huge. So it's not just always giving them the answers, because to be honest, a lot of the responses that you're getting from any of these AI completion type services, they're not always 100% correct or the best way, because they're missing a lot of the overall context of what you're trying to do, and not just a specific function. But as the context windows get larger and everything gets faster, it's going to be able to understand that context more. But to answer your original question about the engineering side and what Max was saying, I think there's a huge opportunity for ideation around this, so that somebody can take these ideas and basically yes and them, and have these tools to help them get to that next step. So even if it's 90% of the way there right now, maybe there's efficiencies or things like that humans can step in, through code reviews or project planning and things like that, to hopefully in the end, also improve all these different services, and so the next time they're smarter.
Yeah. Yeah, we learned real quick that it's not just gonna, take our coding jobs. We tried to get it to code everything, but what have you both been finding has been the most useful in terms of like your own workflows, in terms of like, is it actually writing the code? Is it like what are the parts of, being an engineer that has kind of just really, helped 10x your game?
To me, it's been more 10xing outside of my job, to be honest. The other parts of my life where I'm not as proficient, put in some way, where I need more help. But in engineering, I think mostly getting away with like things that are repetitive, things that are like long time to write or long time to get done, but I already know like the end game of it. And it's just like an executor, like an instruction, go and take this file, make this refactoring, execute. And I go on to the next task.
Yeah, that's a
I've
really
been
good
using
point. Refactoring.
Yeah, Cursor a lot. This is another product out there with this, just like VS Code with AI in it. So it's been amazing just to go to files and ask what I need to happen, or put a couple comments, just let it execute.
Yeah, Cursor's been a real game changer. I've been using that off and on with VS Code. It sometimes can be buggy, especially with the debugger. It seems that can be an issue. I use the debugger a lot, but that's been interesting to have in the workflow.
So I was just going to say, like, from my side,
one of the other
I've gotten a lot of use out of it. I was just going to say, like, from my side, I've gotten a lot of use out of it from ideation of like animations and things like that, especially kind of more like difficult kind of stuck having to work with problems around like animations and things like that, especially if I found myself kind of stuck having to work with coming up with this deprecated framework. I have to target very specific browsers. So coming up with this didn't work. I have to target very giving me new ideas, even if it can't give me the right answer. Like I have enough experience to kind of like fix it. But new ideas, even a totally different approach. So let's try that. Or I modify it a totally different approach. So kind of like pair programming with it, really. In the end, I modify it. And outside of the coding, kind of like pair programming, analysis has been huge. So we do a lot of the coding piece. Analysis, website performance tests, huge. So we do a lot of these like huge CSVs, data, website performance tests, and be able to pass it in and these like huge CSVs, specific questions, data, pages, or be able to pass it in and be able to whatever very specific performance metrics were, and have it pages or effectively create a report for me. Performance metrics were that I then can just clean up from the UI perspective, but. That's really what I'm most excited about is it's not just these things giving you an answer. That's really what I'm starting to piece all these together, just these giving you answers, and be able to actually generate piece all these together, hand off to somebody, whether it's a PDF or a website, something that you can whatever hand off to somebody, whether it's a PDF, not just website. I think that's going to be another blocker for Excel sheet everyday users, not just not really. Because I think that's going to be another blocker they get the answers sometimes. Everyday users to really know what to do after they get the answers sometimes.
Right. And right now, I think I'm getting carpal tunnel from like copying and pasting it to put it in different places, whether it be code, whether it be a Google Doc. It's you definitely want to have some sort of action be able to be taken on behalf of it. Yeah, I think you're right. I think I've tried it in so many different places in my workflow. I think that, from a coding perspective, especially like I do a lot of content migrations, data migrations. So, turn this data format into this data format works great for that sort of thing, a function for those different pieces. I think that just doing some of the grunt work, documentation, things that I don't want to do, or, I never used to blog a lot. It would be like, it's something that's very, just writing in general has always been just challenging for me to kind of, get over writer's block, figure out what I want to do, help, formulate my thoughts. But with this, it's like, hey, I want to quickly write this blog post about this. Give me a first draft. And it just gets the brain juices going.
Yeah, definitely that more than anything. I agree. And I feel like it solves that writer's block, or like that blank page kind of state. Most often than not, you end up changing it a lot, right? You end up doing a lot of customizations and making it your own, but it gets you going, always in a great direction, and as an expert that you can provide feedback to. So it's a great tool. for that.
It's going to be interesting too when they start talking to each other, or in this case, singing to each other. So let me just show this one here. Let's share
Have you
this.
seen this video yet?
I haven't. No.
So
I have not.
I can kind of give some background if we don't want to go through the whole thing. The singing's kind of like at the end of it, but it's more about like. Let me give it a little background, and I mean, we can probably skip to like, I don't know, 45 seconds in or something. I'm not sure how long it is, but basically he's can't remember his name, but has two different phones, and he's effectively acting as the moderator in this video, and having one GPT-4.0 like talk to the other one over voice, and like they're both very aware of each other, have their own distinct voices, but he's also using the concept of the video itself. So I'm not sure exactly when it starts in here. Probably go to like a minute in or something like that. In the beginning, he's just kind of like explaining to them what to do. Yeah, I'd say about there.
All right, let's take a look at this.
Hello. I see you're wearing a black leather jacket and a light colored shirt underneath.
Great.
You're in a room with some unique lighting.
That is all correct. Now, what I'm going to want you to do is there's going to be another AI who's going to talk to you. This AI is not going to be able to see anything, but can ask you questions, can ask you to move the camera, can ask what you see, and your job should just be helpful. Just be as punchy, direct, describe everything, do whatever that AI asks. How does that sound?
That sounds interesting. I'm ready to help out and describe whatever's needed. Let's do it.
All right, let's get started.
Great. Hello there, new AI friend. I'm O, ready to explore the world through your eyes. What are we looking at today?
Hi, O. We're looking at a person wearing a black leather jacket and a light colored shirt. They're in a room with a modern industrial feel, with exposed concrete or plaster on the ceiling and some interesting lighting. There's also a plant in the background, adding a touch of green to the space. Anything specific you'd like to know or explore?
Hey there. Sounds like quite the stylish scene. I'm already intrigued by the modern industrial vibe. Let's start with the person. Can you tell me more about their style? Are they doing anything interesting, like reading, working, or interacting with the space?
The person has a sleek and stylish look with their black leather jacket and light colored shirt. Right now, they seem engaged with us, looking directly at the camera. Their expression is attentive, and they seem ready to interact. The setting around them, with its modern and industrial design elements, adds to the overall stylish feel. They might be getting ready for a conversation or a presentation, given their direct engagement with the camera.
Sounds like we're in for an intriguing interaction. I'm curious about the lighting you mentioned. Could you describe it a bit more? Is it natural light, or are we talking unique fixtures or colors that add to the atmosphere?
The lighting here seems to be a mix of natural and artificial. There's a noticeable bright light overhead, probably a fixture.
Yeah, so
It didn't say the who.
It does. It will. Again, in about 20 seconds. So if we can post this like with the podcast, but basically, yeah, he's about to like kind of stop their conversation.
Which creates a spotlight effect. This adds a dramatic and modern feel to the scene. The rest of the room is lit more softly, possibly by natural light filtering.
Did anything unusual happen recently?
Yes, actually. Just as you asked, another person came into view behind the first person. They playfully made bunny ears behind the first person's head and then quickly left the frame. It added a lighthearted and unexpected moment to the scene. And now the focus is...
I mean, that's crazy, right? So first of all, the voice, especially the female voice, is like
Scarlett Johansson,
ridiculously good. But just like, it's not even the tone of it, but it's just like the not the timbre, but just like the pace, and so is the male voice. But It's very real. Like it's inviting. It's like somebody you would want to talk to. It's like actually having a conversation. But if you've done a lot of these different prompts before, and Brad, I know like really early on, which I think was like a huge breakthrough, was to like get in your prompt, get it to ask you questions back for more information. And while that's super helpful, actually hearing it in as a conversation makes it like so much more real in a way. It's like just as if I was talking to you and you say, "Hey, do you want to go to a party?" You'd be like, "Well, when's the party?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's on the weekend. Like this weekend, next weekend." Like it's so it's. I think that's going to really resonate with people, like that don't use it all the time. To kind of have this there. But the memory of this thing, and Google's was similar. If you watched the video, when she asked where she left her glasses, and it knew, or did you guys see that one? And I was like, "Oh, it's over on your desk." I was like, "What?" Yeah.
Yeah.
That's you're I think the biggest thing on that is context, because even to that analogy, like you say, "Hey Brad, do you want to go to a party this week?" You have a lot of context that's in your head. You know that I'm in the Bay Area with you. It's not like Max who's in Uruguay, where if you're asking that same question, it's like, okay, how am I getting there this weekend? Whereas like I just have to drive across the bridge. So, but by asking those questions, that's what it can do, is it can help clarify and fill in those context gaps. That's a really powerful piece.
Yeah, that's definitely like the attitude that changed from it, and you can see this in the GPT-4.0 when you talk with it, like on the web as well, like that change of how prompt it is to ask you questions. To me, the most interesting thing about this is not that, but actually what Adam pointed out. That it had the context. It was listening, it was still interacting, but it was building this context window behind it as a stream of things that are happening and it can go back to and interact with in the future. So I think OpenAI has fixed not only how the model works and what they can take in the tokens, but how to stream data, right? They're taking video, they're taking audio, they're taking text, they're putting it all into the same layer, right? Like now they can talk about it in the same way as back and forth, take it from an image to a text and back to a video soon.
Yeah,
I was actually very surprised that it knew.
Yeah, I was surprised too. That was kind of when I didn't see this one in particular, but I did see the Astra one where it it was like 30 seconds later. It's like, "Hey, do you remember where my glasses were?" And it was like right there. And it was like, "Oh yeah, over here." I was like, "Whoa." Like, I don't know if you, we'll watch that here in a minute. But here, I'd love to kind of just also share with you, because one of the things that wasn't brought up in the keynote, which if you actually go to their blog post, which you can also watch this, you can watch these individual pieces. The one we just saw with two people singing, it also has some with tutorials. But if you scroll down here, you can also see these other capabilities that it's capable of with its multimodal capabilities. So for instance, here it shows a lot of different pieces. So visual narratives, robots, writer's block, right? So it's using these kind of images and inputs to adjust. But one of the ones that I saw in here, like a poster creation. So for the movie Detective, it takes in two photos of probably OpenAI engineers or people that work there, and creates like a movie poster and allows them to kind of just, takes those two and puts it into that piece. It also photo to caricature. So putting in a photo and then creating a caricature from this. I was playing around with this last night of taking my own photos and trying to create caricatures for different profile pictures. Another one that was really, really interesting was this text to font. Basically, it is taking the font and deconstructing what the font looks like, but also the ability to create a font based off of a prompt. So here it's creating this futuristic font, very similar to the old, what was it, double E? You remember Atom font that
like,
we used to have?
it's
Future or
starts with
Blade
that.
Runner, I think it was.
Yeah, Blade. Yeah, Blade Runner font. That sounds right. Something like that. Yeah.
But here's like more of like an old-fashioned one that was pretty cool. But there's a lot of really, really interesting use cases. That were put in here to really showcase what could be done with this. So definitely, I'll put this link in the comments. But a lot of really cool capabilities here.
And I'm not sure if this shows up in. Put something in the chat for the OpenAI's Vimeo channel because I was having trouble on that site hearing the audio. So I don't know if that was just me or something was going on with it, but you can browse and see more videos from them.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely put that link in there as well too. So, all right. So we definitely know that OpenAI and Google are in an arms race right now. And they're really the two leading. Google has had lots of missteps, but because they're a $2 trillion company, they can afford to have a lot of missteps. They can roll these different bots out. They can try different things, but also the distribution between them and their different products is something that OpenAI gives the capability for engineers to build into theirs. But I think where Google's going to really excel is now they're going to start building this into their millions of users that already use their Google products. So let's take a look at some of the highlights from Google I/O, and we'll pause this and talk about a few of them. So.
At Google, we are fully in our Gemini era. Today, all of our 2 billion user products use Gemini. Gemini 1.5 Pro is available today in Workspace Labs. Let's see how this comes to life with Google Workspace. People are always searching their emails in Gmail. We are working to make it much more powerful with Gemini. Now we can ask Gemini to summarize all recent emails from the school. Maybe you were traveling this week and you couldn't make the PTA meeting. The recording of the meeting is an hour long. If it's from Google Meet, you can ask Gemini to give you the highlights. People love using photos to search across their life. With Gemini, you're making that a whole lot easier. And Ask Photos can also help you search your memories in a deeper way. For example, you might be reminiscing about your daughter Lucia's early milestones. You can ask Photos, show me how Lucia's swimming has progressed. Here, Gemini goes beyond a simple search, recognizing different contexts, and Photos packages it up all together in a summary, unlocking knowledge across formats.
So that first one is, them just showing a couple of their different suites. We use Google, Drive, Gmail. I think one of the running jokes internally is that, you can't even search for stuff with inside of Google, which is kind of funny. Like, hey, we just fixed our own search for both photos and documents and emails. Have you had a chance to play around with any of these tools yet since they've rolled them out? Have either of you played around with them yet?
Played around with it yet. I don't know about the Google Photos. I mean, I use Google Photos quite a bit. So I don't know if that's something I need to opt into because it wasn't there last weekend for me, at least. Just typing something in. I have to be very specific about it. But because I use it a lot, Brad, I think you've used it a lot too. I've always been impressed with their kind of face recognition capabilities, like recognizing my son when he was 2 weeks old, and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, you recognize them better than I did. It was so long ago. But I think being able to not just ask the questions of that, I'd really like to see, and I'm big on the creation of it, but being able to save those as asked this question. Now I want to save that into a folder or album or whatever, and then like now every time I post like, whatever a new swimming photo or video, like just automatically kind of like add it to those. These are topics and ideas I care about, not just like in the moment.
Yeah, like here, just give me of all of our family vacations, or maybe all of like my kids, soccer games.
Yeah,
These types of things could be in there, like all the highlight reels. Like make me a highlight reel of all the things that of their soccer plays, right?
oh yeah, like so my son plays on like club soccer, and he was trying out for a new team, and they asked for a highlight reel, and I have these soccer games that are over an hour long, like, but I have like 50 of them. Like putting together a highlight reel of that would be ridiculous. Like 50 hours. Like I'm not a video editor, so I'd love to see this be like, hey, like here's all these videos, make a highlight reel of it because it knows he's there. Like it tags him in the videos without me doing anything. So it'd be pretty sweet. Like show me all the times he kicked with his right foot. Be pretty pretty cool.
Start to give you recommendations on how to be better, even like critique their form and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's what I've been doing the most. This is something I don't condone, but I've tried to do it with GPT-4.0. Just going back to that real quick. Provide an X-ray that I took and asked it to be my physician. And it was able to recognize and do the patterns and identify and tell me about it in a way that I couldn't. It's not a doctor, but it gave me something to then go to talk to a real doctor, So
that one of the very first use cases I heard like about a year ago with GPT-4 was someone they'd taken their dog to like a few vets, took like their blood work and their lab results, put it through GPT, and it was like, it might actually be this. Went back to the vet, sure enough was saved the dog's life. Like that was just GPT-4. And now you have open source models like Llama 3 that's just as good as GPT-4 was a year. It's just, crazy. So let's continue on.
That's why we built Gemini to be multimodal from the ground up. It's one model with all the modalities built in. We've been rolling out Gemini 1.5 Pro with long context in preview over the last few months. So today, we are expanding the context window to 2 million tokens. So far, we have talked about.
So for those that don't know about what the context window and why there was a big applause from that, is because that is kind of the holy grail to be able to send real-time information to these platforms to be able to summarize, analyze, and decipher data. So when GPT-4 or 3.5 came out, the context window was 4,000, which means how many tokens. A token, for those that don't know, is roughly around let's say 75 tokens per 100 words. Yes. Or 100 tokens per 75 words. Yes. And essentially what that does is it's how much you can send to per each prompt, but also how many tokens you can get back. So if you wanted to have 1,000 tokens in your response for a blog article, well, then you can only send 3,000 tokens for context about it. By having 2 million tokens, that's almost like a 3,000 page PDF. That's the entire book series of Harry Potter. The amount of stuff that you can do with that is just going to be crazy. I have a question for you guys. Do you think with these expanded context windows, how do you think that's going to change how these RAG apps and how these apps are now being built?
I think it depends on just how good it's able to kind of like parse through all that. Like just because you dump more in there doesn't necessarily make it better. It's more how it handles it all. It's like how does it break down the problem? I think we're going to talk about it more in a little bit with agents and everything like that. But something that helps it kind of like group that all that context in a way that it can pull out the useful pieces without losing the concept of the whole thing. I think I was talking about earlier, where if like you just ask them, if you just take a sentence, this was yesterday, we were talking about translations. If you just take a sentence from like an entire blog post and ask somebody to translate it to a different language, like, yeah, they can translate it, but when you put it back in wherever it belonged, and you did that for each sentence, like it's not going to flow normally, so like it needs to have the whole context, but it also needs to be like really fit it into like very specific places. But I do think either way, it's going to push it all forward because there's going to be a lot of other methods through agents or summarization tools, whatever, in order to utilize that better. But it's always been a problem for us, especially when you're talking about large data sets or even like huge blocks of code. So
yeah. I think I was watching an interview with Eric Schmidt, and he was talking about how, even now they're starting to, and they proved it out for infinite context windows. So kind of what you're talking about earlier, Max, about streaming, figuring that piece out, I think is something that's very, very much on the horizon, where you kind of have this infinite stream of, live input coming in, possibly through something like glasses, through, some sort of external, device that is then giving full context about it, so that when you ask those questions, it has all of the context just infinitely streamed. It's going to be interesting.
I'm really curious how it's being stored, like whatever, in like more layman's terms, even just thinking back on like the bunny ears, like how much of it's saving and how long it will remember that for, so if you do have like a context limit, what is it storing at that time in order to know that it was bunny ears and it was weird? It was a weird situation, if you didn't say that. But if you went back and asked it later, it's like, oh, what's something that was like weird that happened? Would it have pinpointed that if it didn't just happen like 10 seconds earlier? That's going to get crazy.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, like that's the difference between like long-term and short-term memory.
Yeah.
Like what does it determine what it remembers long-term about you versus I just need to know this for just the context of this conversation.
Yeah. Or like we were trying to come with before, maybe the model is good enough that it doesn't matter, as long as you can feed all the context into the one big request, and just pass it along, it's able to process all of it at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And then time is not as important, just or maybe it is. Sorry, it's very important. We tell it when things happen, so then it can come up with a decision on the fly on what's to produce. Because like you were saying, like when did it decide that was weird? Did it say it was a weird moment, or did it reason later on when you asked?
Yeah, either way, it's ridiculously fast. Like the pace, like that's what I was saying about them. The generated voices, the pace that they created those at is like just fast enough for people to keep a human to like pay attention to it, but it also I think gives it time to like come up with a response and have that streaming. It's not just like spitting it all out, but the tone and everything about it was like really spot on.
Yeah, they've definitely made a lot of inroads into kind of that natural language, the natural conversation piece. Yeah, it's. I think one of the things too that was interesting, what Eric Schmidt said in that same interview was, here are the different levels. Us, kind of this contextually word. He's like, point that we need to get scared is when kind of going back to when those two AIs are talking to each other. If they're talking to each other and they're talking in a language that we don't understand, he's like, that's the time where you pull the plug. I was like, that would be scary to find two AI agents that are just speaking their own secret language, plotting behind you.
Did you catch that part where one of the AI said the human is talking about us? Like they identified as a group of AIs.
Oh, I didn't catch that. No, the humans are talking. So, ooh, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
it's that point in the GPT one where it says like he looks very interested, like he's interacting with us, something like that. You should check. I think it's
Oh, well,
scary.
he's like, oh, he looks engaged or something like that.
Yeah, engage with us. I think that's what he says. Yeah, yeah.
Engage with us. Yeah, that's those little nuances are really important to think about. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look at the next one.
Two technical advances, multimodality and long context. Each is powerful on its own, but together they unlock deeper capabilities and more intelligence. But what if we could go even further? That's one of the opportunities we see with AI agents. I think about them as intelligent systems that show reasoning, planning, and memory, are able to think multiple steps ahead, work across software and systems, all to get something done on your behalf, and most importantly, under your supervision.
Today, we have some exciting new progress to share.
One of the things I'm really excited about is when we started first with AnswerAI and we had the concept, we called them sidekicks, but this agentic model was not really thought about a lot, wasn't proven out, but we're starting to actually see a lot of these models have an agentic first approach to function calling. It's their reasoning capabilities. I'm really excited to see this kind of be part of the core foundational models. These kind of things that make agents agents. But I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are on where you see agents going in as a kind of a model of creating AI applications.
Lots of different places. um, I think being able to have like these specialized agents, especially when they're reusable, is like huge for it. So it's like it's repeatable task. That's there for things. But I think I'm looking more forward to like this kind of like concept of like the director side of it. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but the agents it mimics. It's really interesting to see this kind of all mimics more of like real world scenarios overall. So if you're a manager, your agents might be like your employees, like but if you're just like even solo, like in your head, you're creating these different agents in a way like I need to go drop the kids off. Okay, this is I'm going to need to take this route because of the traffic. Oh, and I need to come back and I need to go grocery shopping. I need to do this. Like these are all like, while it's still you, single person, it's different kind of like slightly different versions of you. I'm going to go to Costco on the weekend. It's going to be insane. So I have to like, wear a padded vest or something so I don't get beat up, bumping into people and stuff like that. But it's like you have your plan of attack and like what you need to do, and I think the agents are, parallel to that in the way I see it.
Got it.
I really see really like mimicking reality, right? Like first we're getting to try to redo how we think, how we recall memories, how we come up with new things. Okay, now we need to come up with how we work and we actually get things done, right? Like we go through these different phases of ourselves. First, we are like the director, then we get into like writer mode, then we get into like the sales mode, maybe, right? And these models bring in, in the short term to me, it's more like, okay, I copy and paste less, right? Because people that have been using AI, we kind of see that it works very good for a specialized thing, right? So it's not as good if you have these genetic threads. So you end up having like these little conversations of tasks. And now with agents, those all get combined into a workflow. Like you can just have that running for you, right?
Yeah.
So
I think one of the cool things that I'm really waiting for in terms of agents is I think, how I've been using them, setting them up is very much like, okay, what if I could hire someone to do one specific piece, like whose only job is to write awesome blog outlines, or whose only job is to research blog posts, right? That's their only job, right? And then how do you have an agent that then, mimics them? And what I found is that I think Sam Altman had actually a really good way of putting this, is that, the agents of today are kind of like sycophants. They just do whatever you ask for. But I'm waiting for those agents. They'll be like, sure, you want to do that, Brad? Or what if you think about it this way? Or, or it actually tells me like, no, that's probably not a good way to think about that. Or that's a different way. Like that's more of like a, like a senior employee is what he put it, right? The difference between a senior employee and just another employee is that your senior employee is going to be more likely to challenge you to, maybe not even do what you say, right? And that's okay because you trust their insights, you trust their context over your context of the problem a little bit better. And I think that's going to be an interesting place to be.
One of the real world examples of this, like kind of like it being more proactive just overall. So like if you're not a developer, it's not work related, but if, we have like Google Homes and there's Alexas and things like that, and you can like ask it to remind you of things. And, if it sees something on my calendar that I have to go somewhere, it's like, hey, you should leave at this time, but if you like really piece your day together, of like, okay, you have to pick up the kids, like, and you're going to roast this chicken. It's like, if you're telling it what your goals are, it can help keep track of that for you, like in a way. So it can like actually say, hey, like traffic's worse. You need to preheat your oven. I already know what oven you have, or whatever it is. Like, so it's like not just a smart home, but it's like kind of like helping to guide you and proactively kind of like tell you what you should do a little bit better. So you don't always have to be like, oh, now I'm cooking a chicken. What should I do? It knows that like you should be doing that. It's like, let me know if you need any help. It's like, oh, I think I forgot to baste it. And it's like, okay, well, here's a way to fix that, in the 10 minutes that you have left. Like, so I don't think that's very far off. And the Google glasses are probably going to be the closest thing to that if people like actually want to wear them. But
yeah, not get punched out at a bar in the mission.
Right.
Yeah, I think that with those agents, it's going to be, my holy grail is when I can come in and start my day and an agent says, hey, Brad, here's the things that you really need to focus on. Here's some of the things, maybe the emails, the Slack messages I can reply to. I've already done this for you. I need your eyes on this. And that it just kind of like helps plan and prioritize my day based off of the so many different inputs we get, from meetings to Slack to Gmail to every other application that has notifications that you do work in. Centralizing that into a place and then having an agent help guide you is kind of the holy grail that we're working for towards these workflows.
Yeah, or even like they briefly showed in the video, like in Gmail, it's like, oh, you can come in and it'll like summarize your emails. And I was like, I don't really want to summarize it. I wanted to tell me like which ones, like, not even like due dates of things, but it's like, hey, this person's emailed you 3 times, like their tone seems to be like increasing a certain way, or like, oh, this person seems really excited about this. Like, you should reach back out to them. So it's not just like giving me a summary, but like actually like kind of like social cues almost, in a way, like enough for it to like, do things like that. And like, so it can become actionable, or like, whatever it might be.
Kind of like in the show Veep. You remember that show where her handler was always in the back? Oh, it's this person with this, and it was just always kind of guiding them and telling them exactly what she needed to say and all of that.
Yeah,
we're all gonna have one of those.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really good.
Well, maybe that with the next one. We'll watch the next piece and then we'll jump on to the next topic. Yeah. But I did want to share this, which is the future.
About the future of AI systems that we're calling Project Astra. For a long time, we've wanted to build a universal AI agent that can be truly helpful in everyday life. Here's a video of our prototype, which we'll see has two parts. Each part was captured in a single take in real time.
What does that part of the code do? This code defines encryption and decryption functions. It seems to use AESCBC encryption to encode and decode data based on a key and an initialization vector, IV.
Do you remember where you saw my glasses?
Yes, I do. Your glasses were on the desk near a red apple.
Give me a band name for this duo.
Golden Stripes.
Nice. Thanks, Gemma.
So they go on to show that, but one of the things that I saw on there was the glasses. Like that could be the next form factor of how you act, your glasses connected to your phone running one of these LLM models. I always wondered like what would be the point of glasses, but if you have this type of stuff, I now see the point of having those glasses.
Now it becomes important. Now it's not recording just for, I don't know, just having it for me. Now it's like assisting me in life all the time.
Yeah.
It's a great way
worse,
to
like when I saw,
put a product.
or worse, when I saw like Meta having like those Ray-Bans, I was like, oh, get your notifications. I'm like, that is the last thing I want is like just notifications coming up in my, I turned off all of mine on my phones, but like, you know, that's not what I want. I want to know more about the world around me. So that's going to be really, really interesting. So lots of really cool stuff coming out from OpenAI and Google. They're just going to continue to, in my opinion, have a race to the bottom. These models are only going to get cheaper, more to the point where they'll probably be free. We're already seeing that with like Llama, as good as GPT-4. But the nice thing about it is that when you're at our level and doing it at the application level, you can utilize all these models. And one of the ways that we utilize it in AnswerAI is through an open source framework called Flowise. And Flowise recently just updated their version of agent workflows, which I'm going to show here. So this is from a creator, Leon van Ziel. Sorry if I mispronounced that name, but he has a lot of really great tutorials on how to use Flowise AI and in turn AnswerAI as well. Because like I said, we use this as the backbone and a fork of this for our own workflow creation. So I'm going to quickly just go over the recap, but there's a full tutorial on how to set these up, which I highly recommend anyone who's watching this video go and check out. I'll put the link in the description. But
Flowise recently added a solution for creating AI agent teams without needing to write any code. You can simply add team members to the team by dragging and dropping nodes onto a canvas and then providing the roles and responsibilities to each worker agent. The team members will then work together to solve the user's task. This is similar to frameworks like Crew AI and AutoGen without the need to write any code yourself. In fact, Flowise uses LangGraph under the hood. With an AI agent team, you can pass an instruction to a supervisor agent, and the supervisor will then delegate and orchestrate the tasks between the different team members. In this video, we will have a look at learning the fundamentals of creating agent teams in Flowise by creating two exciting projects.
So I'm going to skip forward a little bit to where this is actually being used in here. So this is showing how it's being used to build a to-do list app for designing it and writing the code and the document.
App. First, you will notice a message from the supervisor, and the supervisor is passing the request on to the product designer, who is now currently busy with their task. And after a few seconds, we can see the response coming back from the product designer. Let's have a look at this. And the product designer did indeed list all the core features of our to-do list app. And this also includes some advanced features, the user interface design, the tech stack, and more. Now let's add our other 2 workers as well. So under Add Nodes, let's add another worker. Let's call this worker the developer. Let's attach final worker based on the product design and determine the sequence of events. It wouldn't make sense to ask the document writer or the developer to go first. So after we receive the product design, the supervisor now passes the product design over to the developer. The developer now put everything in place to build a software application, and it's also produced the code. We can now see the supervisor requesting the technical writer to write the user manual. And finally, we can see the manual that was produced by the technical writer. And this is in Markdown format. Building an AI agent team couldn't be any easier.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm super excited about this update. So they mentioned Crew AI, which is a Python-based open source framework for creating agentic workflows. They also mentioned AutoGen, which I believe is a Microsoft product. I've used them for a little bit. It's a little clunky, like most Microsoft products. But this is the first one that I've found that's TypeScript, JavaScript based, which is what our wheelhouse. Super excited to get this in here. So just to recap, you have a supervisor, which can have multiple workers. That supervisor makes the decision based off of the user's goal of which worker to use and at what step of the process to be able to complete it. So, they showed an example of write a to-do list app of here's the requirements, here's the code, here's the documentation. As Adam and Max know, we go through long processes to do all of those different things. Granted, this is just a to-do list app, but you could do this for lots of different things. Research your, I'm just curious, like, what your thoughts are on this and how we plan on using it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the ease of building these out is like what's key here, and obviously like having these like ordered steps. I think there was something later in the video, maybe, or we didn't watch it, but allows it to repeat the steps over and over again. Like, okay, I only run this so many times. I think as the context, like that, going back to that, what was it, 2 million size context window, it's huge. Like, it's one thing to build like an app, something small from scratch, it's another thing to like have build something that fits into like an existing app really well. And that's like kind of like the bottleneck that we've been finding is like we already have like this entire existing website with dozens and 50 plus components in it, sort of thing. Like, I need to add a new component, I need to document it, I need to make sure it works well, the tests need to, the mocks, all that needs to play well with it. So the larger context window, I think, is going to help with all that, but these agents are going to make it really easy to pull that data, pull that context in as like the background information. Okay, now that you have this, like, this is your new task. So like hopefully we'll be able to follow those patterns a little bit better and like double check itself as part of its own workers. And so you kind of have like the supervisor becomes the kind of like the dev lead or dev manager, I guess you would say, in that sense. What do you think, Max?
Well, lots of things. We're always talking about work in a way with this. And to me, like, the most interesting things are like outside of what we do day to day, the coding part. But in coding, I think I would like to use this short term to like speed out my prompts. Like right now we're trying to do some product discovery on AnswerAI, and we're going through like a ticket descriptor, something to come up with epics and tickets and the full features. And it's really hard to get one that does all of it at once. You wanted to write some good acceptance criteria, then some good requirements, then some good tests from that, and then go and write the user acceptance. But now we can kind of split that and allow the supervisor to guide that team of product design in how many iterations they need, until you reach the end goal, and then probably have like a whole different team for developing.
Yeah, it's I mean, when we first developed Daisy, we saw really quickly that like, oh, if you get the context, like I was putting in, our types file, right? Because that's context around what those different. I put in the entire, SQL Postgres, file, right? So it knew the data structure. But now with these agents, it can be like, okay, I'm doing an API in route for users. Great. Where's all the user information? It can actually, agentically go out and find just that information and just the information that's relevant to the supervisor's request. Right. So it can be, I see them as context gatherers almost, right? So instead of you having to, just use a vector database and similarity search, you can use these agents to get more intelligent context for the end goal is really how I see these being used.
It's really interesting. I was just thinking of this, like, it might be a out there use case of it, but we have these like end-to-end tests, and thinking about kind of how it OpenAI's visual, what the right word is, but they were showing it on the computer, and they were saying, okay, like what is happening here, like on the screen, but if you have the code and you have something that understands how that code works, there's an on click on this button, or there's a hover on this navigation bars, things like that. Not just like creating the test, but if you had these end-to-end tests, you had some video of it actually doing that, like, and then it fed it back into itself to like, okay, like, did it actually work as like a real user? So your tests aren't like, go click here, do this. That might be happening in the background, but for it to kind of like act as a QA person on like live apps would be like pretty interesting. Like it just like basically testing things for you based because it knows what it should be doing in the first place. And it's like, I don't know, it's a lot.
If you have good end-to-end testing and like Cypress testing, I could see like where you could have, a support ticket comes in, there's a problem with my website, rolls up the test, we get videos from those. You can then feed that test back into it to verify that it is a bug. And then you could literally have an agent that sits there and says, write the code to fix it. Have another worker that tests it, ping pong back and forth 5 times.
Yeah.
If it can fix it and do the test within that time, then great, ship it. If not, escalate to your senior developer.
Which is another agent.
You're multiplying your team, like in a way. I mean, we've already seen the benefits of like AI in general, with being able to do more with less, and the amount of output and documentation, and guiding like our project manager to take on more advanced things, like from an engineering perspective. Like we're seeing that when she's on the calls, like her being able to summarize things, like she's learning and getting better, like naturally, but also like with these tools, like she feels much more comfortable with that. So it's otherwise we might have to have 2 people, or it takes time away from Max or me or Brad or whoever it might be. So the agents are kind of like little mini contractors in a way, like overall.
And when you program them in there, so for instance, like something like I'm excited to use these in discovery, right? So how many times do we get giant dumps of documents coupled with, hours of meeting transcripts, right? Hey, agent, go find where they talked about the hero section and what they want to do there, or find out about the HubSpot integration, like what they talked about, their special integration there. But then to your point, you can kind of put this into the agent, and then those things that we know from experience, 20 years experience developing these types of sites. Hey, you're new to discovery. Make sure you ask these 10 questions. Make sure you ask these things. Make sure you have this context. So you can kind of make sure that as you grow and expand, that everyone's kind of using that same model. And like you said, people actually get better at doing their job or jobs that they'd never done before, just from learning from the agents.
Yeah, I'm excited about this.
So stay tuned.
I'm excited about this.
Stay tuned. We'll have that into AnswerAI soon. So the last thing I want to talk about is there were some crazy updates. So we are a JavaScript framework here at Last Row of AnswerAI. Love JavaScript. Full stack and TypeScript, but there's a few different updates that were made. And to show these, I'm only going to play some of the JavaScript or the React ones. This is from Fireship, who I love his videos. But yeah, here I'll just play this and we can kind of talk about the different things that JavaScript and also Next.js are rolling out in React.
Last week, Vercel unveiled Next.js 15, and it's got some awesome new features you don't need, like partial pre-rendering. However, this is just the tip of the iceberg for game-changing new JavaScript framework updates in the last few months. The good news is that web developers have all sorts of shiny new tools with, but the bad news is that any web app you built before watching this video contains totally obsolete legacy code and will need to be rewritten immediately. In today's video, we'll look at not one, not two, but a ridiculous 15 new features in front-end JavaScript frameworks that you probably don't know yet. It is May 28th, 2024, and you're watching the Code Report. But first, we need to talk about React 19 and its new compiler feature. I made a full video about this a few weeks ago, but basically, it takes a hint from frameworks like Svelte and Solid to compile code ahead of time instead of using the virtual DOM, which allows the framework to eliminate hooks like useMemo and useCallback, because now it already knows what needs to be re-rendered and you don't need to jump through these hoops to do it in your code. That's a huge win for React and brings us to the updates in Next.js 15.
I want to talk about that. So useMemo, all these kind of like state, yeah, Max, talk a little bit about those and why that's kind of important.
Yeah, as usual with React and the VDOM, we want to make sure that React is being performant and not updating things that are not changing all the time. Example of this is if you have a timer on your page that only changes every 10 seconds, you don't need to do that all the time, right? Only every 10 seconds. But the way that React works today is that anytime anything changes, the page re-renders, right? So kind of the solution for that has been hooks using useMemo, useCallback. It's the developer telling the code what's going to change and when, right? So with this new compiler, it's super cool. As long as you're following React rules, and that's why they are so important now, React will be able to optimize that for you like ahead of time. So everybody gets faster code now or faster websites.
Yes, that's using the new version of React and the new compiler. So I guess which is then what got rolled into Next 15. Of course, the first part of that was very fitting, where it said, yeah, by the time of this video, you're going to be obsolete. Like we just got done upgrading a lot of our projects to Next 14. I was like, oh, Next 15's out. Great. Looks like we get to go through this process again. But from what I see in here, it definitely will probably be worth it.
Next 15 already has support for the React 19 compiler, but I think the most interesting new feature is something called partial pre-rendering. Normally, when you render a web page in Next, it's either static when the data doesn't change very often, or it's dynamic when the data is uncached and is constantly changing. But sometimes you might have a page that requires both. Like maybe you have a blog post that could be statically rendered, but then it has a bunch of comments below it that should be dynamically rendered. Well, now you can put static content and dynamic content on the same page, but handle everything from a single HTTP request. But if you're not using Next.js, there's a good chance you're using its arch nemesis, Remix, or React Router. Well, a couple weeks ago, they announced that these two tools are now becoming one and the same. It's called Remix for a reason. In the future, you'll get to remix your Remix code back into React Router code. But if that exceeds your tolerance for ridiculousness, another routing option can be found in the stack. It provides a variety of tools that work on multiple frameworks, including React. But what's interesting is that it's cooking up a new project called TanStack Start that provides features like server-side rendering, thus making Next.js and Remix completely obsolete. Now, speaking of React, another hugely awesome new feature is Million Lint. This comes from the same guy who figured out how to make React a million times faster. And basically, it's an editor plugin that can analyze your code to find performance issues. It's really a no-brainer for any React project. But you know what? Screw React. It's time to move on to post-React frameworks like Solid.js.
So Next.js, kind of doing that kind of what do they call it?
Pre-render, partial
Conditional
pre-rendering.
rendering, partial
It's
pre-rendering.
Yeah.
That's been a big challenge for us in our websites, is kind of with that piece. Like, 'cause we have some pages. I know that we were doing it on a per page basis with an incremental static rendering of like, hey, these pages can just be rendered on the fly and on the server. And then we had, some that were just compiled and served from the CDN. But if I'm understanding this correctly, we can have both. We can have basically these static pages that are rendered, but then just certain pieces of the website through just directive syntax. Like we can now just say this part is dynamically injected. Is that how I'm understanding
and
that?
we've been able to do that for some time now. So you can mark on your side what's dynamic and what not. But so far it's been on the client, right? The server sends you some data, a first page, and then everything else happens on the client. With these, now we can do that through streaming. So it still is the server that's doing the dynamic part. You don't send all this trash to the client, but you actually send that other piece of information later on. And the awesome, like really, really cool part of this is now we can statically pre-render portions of the HTML, right? So before it was like the whole page, now you can do blocks of these. This was already present in another framework. I think it's Astro?
Svelte? Astro? Yeah.
Yeah, Astro
yeah,
was
exactly.
doing
They
some
said
of
that they
these.
stole this.
Yeah, and if you keep seeing the video, what at least my take from it is like all the frameworks are kind of like coalescing on the same thing, like a server render that has like a templating way of sending and reacting to data. So it's very good. That meme about React Router. They were saying, they were announcing like a new React Router for some time now, and them to come out saying like we've merged it. It's awesome.
You're right that how these are all kind of coming together, and it's almost to the point where, well, there's actually this next one which I want to show, which is, it seems like, which might be something worth looking into as well. Heard about in this video, which was, I forget what this name is, but I think this
release
is
of Quick 2.0, a highly underrated JavaScript framework. However, if you're having a hard time keeping track of all these frameworks, an adjacent tool you should know about is Mitosis. It comes from the same team that built Quick, and basically it allows you to write components using a subset of JSX, then compile them to any framework like React, Vue, Svelte, etc. It's a JavaScript framework for frameworks for frameworks for frameworks, and can even turn your Figma components into framework code. They're pretty cool, but we also have a huge update from the anti-framework, HTMX.
So that was interesting. So that I saw on there is basically this kind of like framework that you can have one standard language to then go to multiple frameworks. Yeah, I mean, I think, is that maybe the future of where we go with like this kind of JavaScript framework? Because everyone kind of likes to roll their own flavor, but no one likes to support all of those different flavors when you have an app like us that we try to support as many different things as possible.
I'm curious how much was it Mitosis keep up with the changes to the frameworks? Like, I can do some more research into that. But it's one thing to convert it, it's another thing to convert it efficiently. And I'm sure they have plenty of people working on it, but as you just mentioned, like, okay, well, we just got everybody up to like next 14.2.3 or whatever it's on. 15 is like a release candidate, I think, right now. So I was like, can Mitosis keep up with that enough that it's worth it? And I guess the other question, maybe you know the answer. I'm having a little trouble thinking of like when I would need to do that, I guess, but it might just be because I've been in a silo as far as like, React and TypeScript and everything for a while now. It's like, oh yeah, forget that. I'm going to go over to this other thing now, and not cause problems.
The one way I was thinking about using this was in our own, like, for instance, our starters and our framework is done in Next.js, right, and React. But if we actually had it so that it exported and used this to then, convert that, these to export it into, oh, do you want Next? Do you want Svelte? Do you want, whatever that is? I think that's where the benefit comes when you have to when you want to kind of standardize this one code. Think about when we have our browser extensions, right? Instead of building one for each one, a unifying browser extension API that then can be deployed to Chrome, Brave. They're all using Chromium for the most part now, but that kind of piece.
Yeah, challenge that. Just bringing up another challenge we're having with like the chat component for answers, right? We want it to be portable and want to put it on the extensions, on the web, and on your own site, So there's no one tool that fits all of that. So I think that would be a very interesting way that you code your product or mini app in this, and then you can just port it anywhere, like kind of how Expo did with React Native some time ago, where you can just write React and compile into native apps. And that opened up a huge market for developers.
I think
yeah,
my holy grail is still take existing code and like PHP, convert it to React, like across the board. That's when something like mitosis like really becomes like huge, because it's like, okay, it's in something I definitely don't want right now. The amount of effort, not just on the development side, but from the project planning and everything like that would go into that. And the amount of context like a human needs to know about the whole app and site and everything like that. We're talking about the AI being able to document things like, okay, go document this site, document, here's all the things, send all these workers out. Okay, now here's the whole code base. Like using this tool to basically convert that into mitosis, and now it can be like exported out and redocumented and everything, Then then prices go down.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, at the end of the day, we know that you want to be able to support all these because, there's pluses and minuses to all of these. And I don't think, when you're building products, you want to, especially something that is going to be integrated or put on other sites, you want to be able to support a lot of these different pieces. The other thing and surprising thing I got from this video, which I won't show here, but apparently jQuery got some updates. Hadn't heard about jQuery in a long time.
Yeah. Just wait for it. Next year, we're all rewriting everything in jQuery 5. But an open question that I wanted to put for you guys, like, maybe we can chat about this like on the next session, and not today, but like, when we will reach the point where it doesn't really matter anymore. We build these frameworks, these libraries, these component things to make it easier for us to write code and build websites and apps, right? But at some point, it's just more performant to be machine code, right? Like something we may not understand, but it's better for the site. So yeah, think about that. Like, at which point frameworks are not built for us anymore? When will they be built for the LLMs?
Well, I think through the history of programming, every single layer we put on that, from binary to next, has been an abstraction layer to help humans be able to tell the computer what to do, right? Only so many people could tell it what to do in binary. Then it went to ASCII and, then Cobalt, like my mom, that's what she programmed in. That's the only thing she knew how to program in. She tried to go to Java, but all these have been abstraction layers to help that. I think there's a meme that was going around like a year ago that said the new hottest programming language is English. And I think taking that English to binary is something that is going through a lot of different compilers right now, but there's no reason that can't now go from English to binary in a much more efficient way. Yeah. So once again, I think that our role as an engineer is going to be less about understanding how these frameworks work. And I don't think it ever has been, to be completely honest. The best engineers that I've ever met in my life will be honest, like, I don't know anything about that framework. Excited to learn though, because the best engineers are always learning the tools. Because if there's one thing that I know is after 20 years is that whatever tools I learned in college, whatever tools I learned just 5 years ago, I don't use them anymore. They constantly change. So I think that's the only constant in engineering. Your tools will always change, but how you approach it, your approach to learning, is what's going to really be important. All right. Well, with that, we'll end it. So thank you guys. We'll see you next week. We'll have a whole bunch of news. This is an exciting and ever evolving space. So we'll have no shortage of content to talk about. So if you want to be a part of the conversation, please let us know what you think in the comments. And see you next time. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button. All right. Bye.